Okay, thank you all for joining us on this fine Wednesday, May the 11th, where we are here to ask Wade why. So why Wade? And discuss Wade Herring's plans and views on discussing the Black legislative agenda. I am Trish Brown, Democratic candidate for Chatham County Board of Elections this upcoming primary, and I am doing this forum with our commissioner, Adot Whiteley. And Aaron, why don't you go ahead and tell the people a little bit about yourself, and then we will get started.
Awesome. Well, off my Wi-Fi because I had a little bit of a lag. Can you hear me?
Yes.
There we go. So thank you so much for the introduction, Ms. Brown. I really appreciate it. As she stated, I am Aaron Whiteley, Commissioner of the 6th District, Chatham County, and small business owner, as well as a Black guy. And so because of that, I think I am very qualified to be a part of this, because I definitely think it is important that we engage our candidates on issues that are real and issues that we all are facing, that we are looking at. So with that being said, I want to make a quick introduction of the candidate that we are speaking with today, one Mr. Wade Herring, running for Congress. Mr. Herring, thank you so much for being here. With that, again, just to kind of get into it, I know everybody may have dinner on their schedules, want to kind of get into everything. Again, I appreciate everybody who is here being a part of this. Wade, I appreciate you being willing to be here, because some folks may dodge what they consider as tough. And one thing I remember you saying was that you wanted to face issues head on. And so I really appreciate and admire that about you. And that just kind of just says a lot about who you are. So thank you.
Thank you.
So one of the things that we wanted to kind of touch base with, well, actually, no, I'm going to turn it back over to Trish and let her kind of lead off with the questions, and then I'll jump in intermittently there too.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. And Wade, thank you again for joining us. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy campaigning schedule. I now know what that's like. and for you, I'm sure it's on a much larger scale. So thank you for giving us some of your time to answer some questions that were developed by myself and the Black community here in Chatham County. And just so everyone who is watching is aware, these questions were developed directly from the Black legislative agenda that has been developed. And so we're talking about issues that other business owners, other citizens of Savannah, and other community leaders actually care about and prioritize. So with that being said, Wade, the very first question that we have for you is, why do you feel it's important to ensure that the priorities of the Black legislative agenda are addressed by you?
Well, a representative is supposed to represent everybody in the district. In the 1st district, if you look just in terms of population and percentages, and that of course is only part of the story, but approximately 30% of the 1st district is Black or African American. In some counties, though, like Chatham County, that percentage is much larger. In Chatham County, that percentage is more like 41%. So the one reason that the legislative agenda, the Black legislative agenda, is important to me is because it is reflective of who I will be representing. Something else I would point out is that when I am elected to Congress, I will be the only white Democrat in the congressional delegation from the state of Georgia. In the Senate, of course, we've got Senator Ossoff as well as Senator Warnock. But among the Democrats in the congressional representatives from Georgia, I would be the only white person. So I'll have to work, will want to work with the other members of the delegation. And again, to reflect as a representative the needs and requests of those persons that I represent.
Well, that's interesting. That's an interesting data point there, because I think that oftentimes could get lost in translation. And but so understanding that, understanding that African Americans make up or we'll just say minorities make up so much of make up the majority of that congressional representation in Georgia. Do you feel like that agenda that has been created by the Black leadership has been prioritized in areas that you would like to see it as it relates to locally? I know that, of course, this was created before you got there. So maybe a better way to pose that, or what are some either points within that agenda that you like and agree with or would like to see expounded upon?
Well, let's talk about leadership and priorities of leadership first. Mm-hmm. The incumbent, I think it is the incumbent congressional representative in this district has not provided any leadership on the issues that are important in the Black legislative agenda. I've done a lot of listening and a lot of learning since I started on this campaign last year. And over again, when I met with local elected officials, they told me that the incumbent has never telephoned them to say, what do you need? What's important? How can I help? Never. I think it's also safe to say that the incumbent, there are just certain spaces and there's certain groups you will not see him. So there's been no leadership by the incumbent whatsoever. The things that I have talked about since the beginning of my campaign line up with the issues of the Black legislative agenda. So number one has been voting rights. And when voting rights are restricted, such as Senate Bill 202 by the Georgia General Assembly last year, it impacts all of us. But I am keenly aware that it disproportionately impacts people of color. I've been talking about healthcare from the very beginning and expanding healthcare, and particularly on the front end of people's lives to manage and prevent conditions like obesity, diabetes, and hypertension. I am keenly aware that the lack of healthcare, affordable, accessible healthcare, disproportionately impacts people of color, and that those underlying conditions disproportionately impact those communities. I've been talking about the beginning about expanding Medicaid. It will help poverty and healthcare in the entire state of Georgia. But again, particularly when we talk about issues like maternal health and infant mortality, those issues disproportionately impact communities of color. Education, early childhood education and daycare. The federal government has a role to play there. Education is a transformative power out of poverty. One more time, when we talk about lack of quality childcare, right now it's completely broken after the pandemic. It disproportionately impacts people of color. Infrastructure and broadband expansion, another example. So all down the list, the things I've been talking about from the very beginning are issues that will help all of our lives, but they will have real impact on our communities of color as comprised in the first district.
Well, so, it's interesting you say that, when we talk about poverty, there are a lot of different aspects how we can affect poverty. And so, one thing I think about, in my personal opinion, I think one of the ways that we help limit poverty and lessen poverty is by the growth and expansion of minority businesses. By creating examples for our youth to see minority business ownership, and also being able to, in essence, take things into our own hands. And so currently, approximately 10% of contracts that are federally awarded go to minority firms. So in what ways would you be able to assist increasing that percentage of contracts awarded to federal contracts that is awarded to minority or Black-owned businesses?
Sure. So again, when I have been traveling this district, all 15 counties, one of the themes I've heard over and over again is the frustration of local businesses when they look at the license plates on a government funded project and all the license plates are from outside the district. So one of the things that I want to work on and to be a champion for as the congressional representative for this district is to make sure that all of our local businesses have an opportunity to bid and to participate on those government funded jobs. That would especially include minority businesses. The frustration that I've heard from minority business owners is that the process to participate is cumbersome and that they don't have access to the information. So it seems to me that the congressperson for the district should make sure that the businesses in his district, including those minority-owned businesses, including women-owned businesses, have access to that information. And if they need help processing the information, then let's provide that help. And then the final piece of that, I think, would be real participation. That, you know, if you're on the bid to get the job, that means you better be staying on the bid to participate in the job in a legitimate way. I'm not talking about any manufactured thing, but that it's a real bid and that the bid meaningfully reflects how the project is going to be worked and staffed, et cetera. And that everybody is on board with that from the very beginning.
Thank you. I think that it was important that you mentioned that it's cumbersome, because that is what deters a lot of small Black business owners from applying to those opportunities. So pivoting from that point, how would you plan to support state-funded programs that provide technical assistance for Black and minority-owned businesses to compete in those opportunities?
Sure. So again, the question is aimed at state-funded, and that's going to be primarily the responsibility of the state of Georgia. But I would point out at this point that one reason government in the state of Georgia is kind of flush with cash right now is because of the federal government. A lot of that money has flowed through the state, into the state from the federal government. So it seems to me that my job would be to make sure that that money is spent the right way and that it actually gets spent. And I'll give you a perfect example. The rent eviction program, lots of federal money to the state of Georgia. A lot of that money did not get dispersed. I feel about, you know, I'm not saying ignore fiscal responsibility. I don't want anyone to misunderstand me there. But if something gets funded, if the money has been appropriated, then it needs to get spent where it's needed. And so the representative's job is to make sure that that money that has flowed through the state is actually getting spent in the appropriate way in his or her district.
Yes, not reallocated to another priority of the official. Yes.
Correct.
Sorry.
No, we're singing from the same page of music. And again, just talk about, you know, when money is allocated, when it's been appropriated by the Congress, again, just specifically to use this rent eviction example, then it needs to get spent. It's like a pastor of mine said one time, people don't give money to a church for it to sit in the bank. They give money to the church for it to go to work.
Yes.
Well, when the Congress has appropriated funds, then those funds need to get spent the way the Congress intended for that money to be spent.
Absolutely. Now, in the vein of money allocation and going back to our discussion when it comes to supporting small or Black businesses and small minority-owned business, women-owned businesses, you know, one of the challenges that we all know that African-American businesses run into is access to capital, whether it be capital to start the businesses, capital to expand and go to the next level, to be able to compete for some of these larger bids. All right. So why do you feel that it's important to support legislation that encourages all lenders to actually lend capital to Black businesses and consumers, especially considering that redlining is supposed to be illegal?
Right. Well, sadly, redlining did exist, and the legacy of redlining continues. Adot, you just said it, the capital, access to capital is a necessity for any business. Again, access to capital has that ability to be transformational, to build businesses and to build that legacy of businesses. So yes, I would support any additional legislation necessary to make sure that there is not discrimination in lending either to businesses or to homeowners. And then the other thing I would want to do is make sure that the laws that are already on the books are properly enforced. The Department of Justice is responsible for most of that enforcement, and I would never want to politicize the Department of Justice, but you know, there's nothing wrong with the representative from your district asking questions to the Department of Justice. Tell me what you're doing here, and tell me is this a priority for you or not? It seems to me too that what we're talking about in part is leadership, not just legislative action, not just regulatory action, but just good old leadership. And I think back to my late mentor, Malcolm McLean, who, when he was mayor of the city of Savannah, and he was trying to peacefully desegregate the city, one of the groups that he enrolled were the bankers. And he, quite frankly, told the bankers, you got to help in this process. You do not want to be an example of what's dividing and splitting this city and threatens to violently divide this city. You got to help in keeping this city together. So it would seem to me leadership on both a local, state, and congressional level, just to make sure that the banks understand people are watching and looking, and that the banks are supposed to be leaders also.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. Okay, so pivoting just a little bit from that point, how can you support legislation that inspires innovation and promotes a robust telecommunications network for Savannah's Black businesses, you know, with the Great Resignation and pandemic showing everyone, hey, you might want to go ahead and start opening your own business and do your own thing. So, you know, how can you support legislation that's going to help with telecommunications?
Sure, and I do support legislation that would expand telecommunications for the minority-owned businesses and quite frankly everybody in the district. And I'm glad you mentioned the flip side. The flip side of the Great Resignation is that the number of new businesses that have started over the past year and a half, 18 years are at record highs. Mm-hmm. And again, as I've traveled this district and talked to people in this district, and said, what's the pandemic been like for you? Well, I lost my job, or I quit my job, but I started my own business, and that's exciting. That's the flip side of the Great Resignation, and again, that's how we grow capital, and that's the great American dream, right? To have your own business, and that's the backbone of the American economy. Still, is small business. That's how I spent my career. Quite frankly, was representing small and medium-sized businesses. They didn't have an HR person. They didn't have big inside legal structure. They had me. But to answer your question, the infrastructure bill that already passed has a lot of money. There's what is it? Here we go, $2.7 billion digital equity fund. Now here's the catch. It's going to be administered through grants through the states. So one more time, the congressional representative in your district, your federal representative, needs to have this forefront of mind that we need to get our fair share of grant money in the first district, and that it's getting spent, and it's getting to the people who it needs to get to.
Quick question for you while you're still on that point. Do we know when those funds will become available so that business owners are aware of when they can apply for grants, or we can follow back up with that?
The short answer is I don't know, but I can find out.
Okay. I'm sorry, go on.
Well, I think again, we're focused tonight, obviously, on the Black legislative agenda. But I can tell you, when you travel through the 15 counties of the first district, there are big areas in the first district where you don't have Wi-Fi, you don't have cell phone coverage, you have no bars.
And for those who are watching, where's the first district? What cities and counties are in
there?
Sure.
The first district is 15 counties from the South Carolina line to the Florida line, from the Atlantic Ocean over as far west as Jessup, Baxley, and Waycross. It's narrow at the top, bulges out in the middle, and gets narrower at the bottom. Anyway, when we talk about expanding digital infrastructure, that's going to be beneficial to everybody in the first district. And because I know from firsthand experience, there's places where it's not just minimal, it's zero.
Yeah, I completely agree. Most people know that I'm a small business owner myself. And when the pandemic hit and my kids had to do virtual school, like I will show you a little bit. There you have little desks. They were in here with mom doing school, but then I had to get Wi-Fi for my business because it's all brick and we didn't have it. So I'm really happy to hear about the telecommunications expansion. Thank you.
Well, so Wade, as you talk about traveling throughout the district, I know that there are a number of people in the first congressional district who are uninsured as it relates to health insurance. And, health insurance, I am an insurance broker, and I can see it's tough to find good coverage on the marketplace, whether it be as an individual or as a small business owner for my employees. So how could you support legislation that reduces the number of uninsured people in Georgia and potentially provide affordable health care for all citizens in Georgia, as well as the businesses?
Sure. Well, let's, again, first, let's do a compare and contrast between the incumbent and myself. The incumbent repeatedly supported efforts to block and to kill the Affordable Care Act, even with no substitute plan in place. One reason he doesn't do town halls anymore is because one of those town halls focused on the Affordable Care Act, and he made the incredible statement that he was asked the question, even if everybody in the district supported the Affordable Care Act, would you still oppose it? And he answered yes. as you might imagine, the reaction was not positive. So he doesn't do town halls anymore. So number one, let's continue to support the Affordable Care Act. And the good news on that is Georgia is the third largest increase in number of persons participating on the exchanges, behind Texas and Florida. Isn't it a coincidence that those are the top three states? And the other good news in Georgia is that the number of choices on the exchange is larger and that the rates are lower. But Adot, you're exactly right. It's still not working as well as it could. So we need to keep working on that. And then, as we've discussed before, an easy solution, it seems to me, to increase the number of insured people is to expand Medicaid to address that gap of 200,000 some people in Georgia. And if the state of Georgia, only one of 12 states that's refused to expand Medicaid, won't do it, then the federal government, the Congress, should go ahead and do it. And I know that Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff have both worked on that, and I would support that effort as well.
Thank you. So we've talked about a lot of the things that you are in support of and will work to continue going. But I have a question on the other side of the fence of, instead of just simply opposing some issues, will you actually work to repeal unnecessary regulations and legal requirements that end up increasing costs, reducing consumer choice, hampering innovation, and limit technology advancements and availability? And if you will work to repeal the unnecessary regulations, how and why or why not?
Well, yes. If there are specific ways that I can repeal laws that unnecessarily burden residents of our district, then absolutely I would do that. Anybody who's ever worked with me professionally knows that I'm a big advocate of keeping things simple. And let me just give you one illustration. I had drafted a contract that then became the subject matter of some minor controversy. The contract was fine. The contract was solid. But the lawyer who reviewed the contract, this other lawyer who reviewed the contract, said, I can tell this is a Wade Herring contract because it's only 3 pages long. Some other lawyer, it would have been 21 pages long. So I'm a big believer in keeping things simple. I got to say, though, let's just be real here. Uncle Sam, when the federal government spends money, it rightly wants to make sure that that money is spent properly. So yes, would I repeal and work to repeal unnecessarily burdensome legislation? Absolutely. But again, to repeat something we talked about earlier this evening, I think for a lot of small businesses, it's a matter of access to information and someone to help walk them through that information. And I saw this in the pandemic firsthand. That pandemic hit, everything was moving really fast in terms of what are we going to do. And the local business community was really kind of on its own. I did not see any leadership out of Washington and very little leadership out of Atlanta to help the business community here. That's wrong. It seems to me that again, the congressional representative, the senior federal official in the district, should be absolutely doing what he or she can to push out information and to get that information to local business owners and the local business community. And that, if it was happening, I didn't see it. And I felt like I was kind of in the middle of the COVID response because we were trying to figure it out as a local business community without any help. So I hear you, Trish. On the one side, it's undue burdens, undue restrictions, undue blocks. Let's remove those legislatively if we can. But on the other hand, let's provide a voice and information and a staff person and workshops and whatever we need to do to make the highway smoother for people so that they can get to those resources.
I absolutely agree. I know, I'm a board member on the Greater Savannah Black Chamber of Commerce, and I know that our financial committee, who is Arisa and I believe Melissa, they are constantly sending me emails and things that I can try and put into the newsletter to try and get that information out to the Black business owners that may be subscribed to our newsletter. But I do agree that just the lack of knowing that the information exists is where we should definitely increase our efforts, and just starting with letting the community of business owners know, hey, this funding exists. So I appreciate you prioritizing that.
And Trish, just a follow up to that, that's going to mean building bridges and uniting people in a way that maybe we're not used to doing in the first district. And can I be so bold as to say in Savannah? We're going to, we put ourselves in these silos. We put ourselves on these islands, use whatever metaphor you want to use. And it ends up being hurtful to all of us. So a big picture goal for me in all of this is let's find ways to unite people. Let's find ways to build people up. Let's quit tearing each other down. Let's quit dividing each other. And God Almighty, the past is terrible, and we've got to acknowledge the past so we can understand the present, but then let's move forward and make a better place for ourselves and for our kids and for our grandkids. I haven't gotten to mention yet, I got a new grandkid. I want a better America for him.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And Adot, I know you have children. Trish, you've got 4, I think.
All over the place.
We've got to quit. We're stuck. We got to get unstuck.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly there. That we have to try to move forward. I think it was Emily Dickinson who said we can't use the past as a hitching post. And but I think you said something that really hits it on the head. We have to acknowledge the past. We cannot just, brush over it. And, but with that, all that being said, and in reference to the legislative priorities or the Black legislative agenda, so to speak, what makes you the best candidate to address those initiatives?
That's the question.
Well, number one, Adot, is simply acknowledgement that these issues are before us, that this history is behind us, that this history explains where we are now, as painful as it is, but now it's time to move ahead. But we can't, again, I don't think the incumbent thinks about these things. I don't think he cares about these things. I certainly don't see him doing anything about these things. So one is an ability to understand, a willingness to listen and to hear and to learn, a work ethic to get to work, an ability to communicate and to explain. And that's what I've been doing my whole career. That's what I've done as a lawyer, is listen and learn and communicate and solve problems. That's what I've done as a volunteer with the Frank Callan Boys and Girls Club and Georgia Legal Services, providing access to justice and opportunities out of poverty for low-income Georgians. That's what I did as a volunteer with Georgia Appleseed to stop the school to prison pipeline. That's what I've done for decades as a volunteer for citizen advocacy, to build a better community and to create on this earth at least some vision of the beloved community. So it's what my career has been about. It's what my whole ethos has been about. And then in terms of politics, it's an ability to put together a campaign and to win, to beat the incumbent, to flip this district. And I am convinced that united, we can do that. But it is going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take a campaign structure, and it's going to take money. And in this primary, I'm the only candidate of the three that has done those things. That's united the community with endorsements, both local and national, that's put together a campaign and gotten the message out on TV and in the mail and on the radio. And then get me out of this primary, and I'm going to take that same hard work and that same structure to beat the incumbent. Right now, he has $2 million sitting in his campaign chest, and he has never been tested. It is my full intent to put him fully to the test, make him spend all $2 million and send him home in November.
Excellent. And this is just the question I had. So you say that you're the best candidate for the job, and my thing in my campaign is transparency, accountability, and trust. So if you get into office, how do you expect your constituents to hold you accountable? What do you expect from us to make sure that you're going to do the job you say you're going to do?
Well, number one, just really basically, again, talking about a campaign would be, does he follow the rules, and does he file all the reports that he's supposed to? Compare my campaign to the other two campaigns in this primary. I'm the one doing that. Number two, I haven't found the people of the first district to be at all bashful about telling me what they think or what they want. They're pretty bold in that respect. And
yes, they are.
And I would expect that to continue. But for example, I'm already talking to reporters. I think that's part of my job. The press is part of our democracy. That's not going to change. I'm going to continue talking to reporters. There were 2 years went by and the incumbent didn't talk to the Savannah Morning News, the largest newspaper in this district. That seems wrong to me. I don't know the last time he had a town hall. Again, he quit having them because there was this one town hall in particular, it was out at Armstrong, where people got pretty fired up about healthcare. I think you got to keep having town halls, even when you hear stuff that's unpleasant and you don't want to hear. And then, of course, the ultimate feedback and accountability is the election, and a member of the House of Representatives runs every 2 years. So basically, you're always running every 2 years. And let me say something about that. The incumbent has been a career politician. He's getting ready to run. He is running for his 5th term in Congress. But before that, he was in the Georgia General Assembly. And before that, he was mayor of Pooler. And before that, he was on city council. He's been in politics all his adult life. I've already had a career, and I do not intend to be a career politician. My goal is 3 to 4 terms, that's 6 to 8 years, and build some bench strength in this district, right? So we've gone 30 years without a Democrat in Congress in our district. We've been wandering in the wilderness. We've been the lost children wandering in the wilderness for 30 years. We don't need to make it 40 years. the children of Israel, it took them 40 years. We don't need to wait another 10 years. So let's do it now. But then my goal is let's build up some bench strength. Let me serve 3 to 4 terms, that's 6 to 8 years. And then I'm coming back home and let somebody else do it. But that the accountability piece is continue to listen, even when you hear stuff you don't want to hear. Continue to learn, continue to communicate, and the voters get to tell me every 2 years whether they agree with me or not.
Yes, so many people get turned off by a candidate and they say, well, I'm just not going to listen to him. And then they get turned off from voting, and it's a vicious, terrible cycle. So that is not the way to do it. Thank you, Wade.
Thank you.
Did you have any other questions, Adot?
No, I was impressed by your answers. I appreciate, again, you being here, and I actually look forward to even more candid conversations with you as you continue on the campaign trail, but more importantly, as you sit in the offices of Congress. So good luck, Wade, and you have my full support.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That means a lot. I got to say, it's been very humbling and at the same time, very energizing to me, this process. I never had any aspiration to do anything like this, but anyone who's heard my story knows that January 6th shook me, and the vote to overturn the election shook me. I thought that was so wrong and so dangerous that I had to get off the sidelines. But the outpouring of support and the encouragement and all of that, it's not only humbling, but it's also very, very energizing. And I'm very, very grateful. And I'm very grateful to everybody on this forum tonight, and grateful to the 2 of you who have moderated this evening.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Good luck on your campaign, and we will see you at the polls.
Thank you. Thank you
Y'all
very much. Y'all take care.